I'm Matt.
Hey, I'm Steve.
Hey, I'm John.
This is the Sober Friends Podcast. We're here for the sober curious, the new guy, and the old timer. We're here to talk about the stuff anyone looking to live alcohol-free has to face day to day, and how we overcame those struggles. We speak for no 12-step group, but we do try to remain anonymous. You're not alone. This is the Sober Friends Podcast. This is a little series where I talk about my experience going through the 12 steps of Alcoholic Anonymous. And I wanted to do this because I think it's going to help you, if you're brand new, even if you've been around quite a while. Hearing somebody's experiences with the steps, their personal challenges, their successes is something that's only going to help you and be supportive. Before I get into that, I need you to do me couple of favors, three favors, as Phil Leotardo once said. I would like you to go to soberfriendspod.com, go to the very bottom of the website and sign up for the newsletter. I create a blog style post every single week that's based on the podcast, but not necessarily just saying, hey, we talked about this, this, and this, and go subscribe. I'm trying to do something in writing that's a little bit different, and then it does link to the podcast. And from time to time, I may want to ask you some questions in a survey environment to learn more about you. All right, number 2, I would love for you to go to Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars, and give us a review. Go to Spotify. Give us a rating there and help other people learn all about this podcast. And when I do these solo, I'm going to put it on YouTube at Sober Friends Pod. That's the universal name for everything. And now I'm going to tell you all about my experience with Step 2. Step 2, where it talks about God for the first time. Many people think that Step 2 is really about that's where you had to start talking about God and you make that connection, but it really is not. On this step, it's really about came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Nowhere in there does that say you have to find your power greater than God right there. What it means is you're opening the door to it, that you are open-minded. When I was drinking, there was a lot that I was closed-minded about, and that was a problem. I wasn't humble enough, and that was a problem, and that caused me a lot of problems. So getting sober was the hardest thing I ever had to do. My friend Chris tells me every single time, because I forget this, of when there's something that I have to do that's hard. I want to get on a new exercise plan. I want to lose some weight. I can't do it. It's too hard. And he says to me, Matt, you stopped drinking. And that is something that is a hell of a lot harder than what you're about to do. And he's right. And then it becomes an excuse when I can't do that easier thing. So step 1, if you look at all of these steps, writing down your list of harms, making amends, they may seem really hard, especially if you're brand new, walking into a 12-step meeting and you look up and you see that window shade that comes down that has all the steps. Oh my God, I can't do that. Admitting that you had a problem and that you wanted to stop and were going to do anything you could to stop, way harder. On the curve, it goes like this, and then everything else is kind of like this. There's gradients there. But you have to trust yourself that any one of these steps is so much easier than that first step. That's the killer. That's the biggest wall. So I wanted to do this for real. And when I walked in, it was really hard to, again, it's, all right, I've admitted I have a problem. I've admitted that I don't want to drink anymore. I'm an alcoholic. Whatever word you want to use, alcohol use disorder, alcohol dependent, just want to stop drinking, whatever works for you. Saying I'm an alcoholic, that's something that works really well for me. So actually going into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting for the first time is really, really hard, and it's terrifying. Maybe it wasn't for you, but it was terrifying for me. So if I'm going to take that step of going to these meetings, meeting these new people, feeling like I'm being judged, And then you look around and you're brand new and they ask you, who is new? I raise my hand. My name's Matt. I'm an alcoholic. I'm new. That's hard to do because you got all the attention on you. Then they ask, who's coming back? Well, the first time I heard that, I thought coming back meant I was on vacation for a week, or I skipped a week, so I'm coming back. Now, coming back means I was sober and I went out and got drunk again. I had a relapse and I'm trying this again. You're admitting failure. That's not something I wanted to do. And especially as I got rolling 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and I got to know these people and they began to trust me, I felt like I'd be violating their trust if I went back out and they would tisk me. Tisk, tisk, Matt, you did a bad thing. So I didn't want to go do that. It was a lot easier just to do the steps. And I was ambitious and felt, if I could really get an A+ on every single one of these steps, I am going to get a 4.0 grade point average when it comes to graduating Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm going to be on the Mount Rushmore of people who went through a 12-step group. Pretty egotistical about that, seeing as there is no grade and there's no graduation. The 4.0 is, I didn't drink today. That's it. There's different grades of people you look at and say, yeah, that's somebody who has really good sobriety. Maybe I want that person to be a sponsor. I'm going to look to them for help. But I don't have to do this perfectly because there is no end of year review on my accomplishments. But put that aside, I wanted to do this great. So when we got to step 2, that God thing of came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, I was going to be open to it. I remember the first time I went to the Thursday night men's meeting in South Windsor, Connecticut. Somebody pulled me aside and said, don't worry about the God thing. Don't worry about the God thing. You don't have to, because there are a lot of people who come in and it feels like a deal breaker. And I understand why the old timers would go to you and say, don't worry about the God thing, because they don't want to scare you away. We want people to get sober. So put it away for now and just keep listening to what's going on and keep not drinking. That's important. But that wasn't an issue for me. And I told that guy, Sam, I said, Sam, that's not an issue for me. And the more I heard about God, and because in the past I'd had connection with a higher power, the more that happened, I started to believe that I never stopped believing in God, but that God stopped believing in me. And that's what put up the wall. That's a hard one. I've come and gone with belief since then, but right up there, I'm like, okay, I feel like God has stopped believing in me. How do I get past that? Because if I don't have God in my life, I'm not going to stay sober. Back in the times in the big book when Bill was writing it, the 1930s, the idea of a power greater than me really was the Protestant Christian God, where only Jesus Christ could save you. It was explicitly a Christian higher power. And in the writing and in the editing, and as time went on, that view opened up to, let's talk about your own conception of what a higher power could be. I don't know if you've been in work or had one of these team building events where they are flexing your Myers-Briggs personality preference. And they give you instructions on how to draw something. And if you're like an extrovert, you might do it one way. If you're an introvert, you might do it another way. And with the same instructions to draw something, people put it up, and like one side of the room kind of is the same. The other side of the room is totally different. And that's how I look at higher powers. Just because I may have had a bad experience in the Catholic Church or wherever doesn't mean that that is where I'm in the box. Think outside of the box. And that was something that really helped me. I have never felt more spiritually alive or felt the presence of some power greater than me than when I was in an AA meeting. I remember going to church after that and feeling, I don't feel as spiritually alive here, listening to the priest or a minister, if it wasn't a Catholic church, than I do for an hour, hour and a half at an AA meeting. Why is that? Well, I was finding my path to spirituality my own way. Here's another reason that this step is here and how I looked at it. It's to be humble. You couldn't do it yourself, at least I couldn't. If I could have done it myself, meaning stopping drinking, I would have done it. I would have been successful for more than 10 months. But I wasn't able to. I needed something more than what human hands were going to help with. And so the idea is you can believe in anything you want as long as you believe that your higher power isn't you. So it's about being humble and asking for help and knowing that you have the fellowship, you have the steps, you have the big book of AA, but you also have this higher power who is your super sponsor, your real AA buddy in the sky that's going to guide you through if you allow him or her or it, however you want to look for that. And that is something that really inspires a lot of hope, at least for me, inspires tremendous hope that somebody's not going to judge me and is really going to help me. So that's where really a higher power can be really, really important. I just wanted to fit in, and the people who I really appreciated and loved in the rooms when I first came in, they all did these things. And when I looked at their lives and how they were now, I think the best compliment I could give somebody who's in recovery is when you tell me stories about what it was like when you were drinking, I can't fathom that you were doing those things, and I can't fathom you were a drinker. If you were to tell that to me, I can't fathom you were a drinker, and I can't fathom these wild things or how your life fell apart. That tells me my sobriety is pretty damn good. And they did this. And they talked about, I get on my knees and I pray to God every day and I treat my disease for another 24 hours. So that's what I did. So I opened the door. I'm not going to talk to you today about, what did that look like? Because the next time we get together where I talk about step 3, which was a humbling experience for me and made me very embarrassed at first, but I probably helped the people I did step 3 with a lot more than they helped me. Well, that's going to be a different situation. So if you're brand new, this is really a case of be open to this. And you don't have to necessarily rush through each step. I'm not of the opinion that you stay a year here, but there is also something to be said that if you're at a step meeting or a big book meeting and you're, oh my God, they're talking about step 4 and I'm not there. It took me months. I think, I got sober in March. I think I did step 5 in November. So to get to step 5, I think it took me about 6 months. I don't know how long it took you. It might have taken you longer. It might have taken you less. My point here is, if it takes a little bit of time to say, can I really go through with this? I'd say continue to work on it. If you're really struggling and saying, I don't know if I can get to that step 3 place, that means you're not past step 2. My suggestion would be talk to your sponsor. Talk to people you really trust. Get some varying opinions. if you're Catholic, for instance, talk to other Catholic people. If you're Catholic and you don't want to hear it, talk to somebody who's Jewish, talk to somebody who's Muslim, talk to atheists. Get an idea of what a higher power could look like. And just because there's somebody else's higher power doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be your higher power. There's this guy who goes to meetings that I know, Tony. So Tony L has talked about, I didn't have a God of my own. So this guy at one of the meetings, Doc, he had a God. And he talked about talking to Doc about this. And Doc said, you can borrow mine until you find your own. And Tony said, that's a good idea. So not having my own and knowing that I had to do this stuff, I started praying each day to Doc's God. And before long, Doc's God became my God. And I have to tell you, I prayed a lot to Doc's God because that story resonated with me. So if you hear stories like that, you've kind of reached the place of step 2 when you're like, I'm willing to try this. And I'm open to, it doesn't have to be the religion that has really hurt me in the past, or I'm an atheist, or I'm an agnostic, and I don't know. It could very well be, I am open to, there is some power greater than me. I'm going to give you some ideas that really work for me. I'm very fortunate that I live near the coast, and I love going to the beach, and I love looking at the ocean. I go down to Narragansett, Rhode Island quite a bit because I'm going to be frank here, the beaches in Connecticut suck. The waves are like something you'd find in a bathtub. I like big waves, and I go to Narragansett. I have some really big waves, and if there's a storm out at sea, the waves just crash and crash and crash. What type of power do I have to create waves like that? I got no power on that. That power is based on the moon, the phase of the moon, how deep the water is. If there is a breaker out there, there are these forces beyond our control that cause waves to come in. Riptide pulls you back, could kill you. There are tides that come in and tides that go out. That's a power greater than me. The moon goes around the earth. It has different phases, and it does certain things to the earth, like the tides. That's a power greater than me. That moon getting here and colliding with some planet colliding with the earth, breaking a chunk off, and having the moon out there, that's greater than me. There are things like that you get your head around. Your higher power could be the group of drunks. I've heard of that a lot, that this group of drunks is a power greater than me because they help get me sober. All things that are worth looking at as an idea for that. And if you're open to, those are things I might be able to get behind, then you're doing step 2. Fine. If it's, I don't know about this, I can't get on board, then give it one more day. One day at a time is a great phrase because all we have is today. So it's like, I can't do it. Don't say I can't do it. Say I can't do it today. And then wake up in the morning and have an open mind to doing it tomorrow, and however many days that takes. I'd really like to know how this resonates with you. How did you feel around step 2? Was this easy and you just coasted right through it? Or did it take you months to get through step 2, let alone step 3? You can email me, matt@soberfriendspod.com, or on Instagram @soberfriendspod. Reach out. I'd love to talk about it on the podcast with you. It's just helpful to know that I'm not sitting here in my basement looking at the camera, looking at a microphone, and talking to myself, because it helps me understand if I have psychosis or not. So please help me understand if I have psychosis. Let me know a little bit about how you got through this. All right. So that's what we got for this episode today. We're going to do more of this series as we go through. We'll have some guests. We'll have Steve on. We'll talk about all types of stuff. Always looking. If you got something that you want us to talk about in our experience, let us know. And until that time, we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.